Hello everyone, my name is The Truth About Trans. I frequently make content on TikTok regarding transmedicalism mainly. I touch on a lot of too cute counters as well. I accumulated over 100,000 likes on my account and close to 1,000 followers before I was banned, and now I still make TikTok content under the name The Truth About Two. This is going to be a transmedicalist reacting to this video here regarding whether or not minors should transition. It's detransitioners versus transgender people. So these are former transgender people talking to current transgender people regarding the issue of whether or not minors should be allowed a medical transition. And I feel that maybe my perspective of the issue might be somewhere in between the two. A lot of detransitioners do identify as transmeds, either before their transition or after their transition, and I do believe that they are fully allowed to occupy that space. But enough of my rambling about things unrelated to the video. We should get started with this. Okay, so these are the detransitioners here on the left, and these are the transitioned people here on the right.
Step forward if you agree with the prompt. Gender-related treatment should be banned for minors.
Looks like we got quite a few detransitioners agreeing with that, probably due to their feeling of mistreatment about that issue. And then we do have absolutely no current trans people. My take on the issue is that HRT should be allowed past a certain age, puberty blockers should not be allowed, and surgery should not be allowed.
We have so many rules and regulations when it comes to tobacco or alcohol or any type of drugs. Driving a car, you can't even, rent a motel until you're like 25. There's some specific things that we need to put into place that I think would help protect our children, because the minors themselves really don't know who they are until they become 25, 26 years old.
I really wonder what his idea of what needs to be put in place until minors transitioning is okay. You can't undo, especially the American law regarding minors being under parents' consent. That's been around for years and years and years, and it will never change. Parents make all medical decisions, all legal decisions for their children. Ultimately, there are very few cases where, as a minor, you do actually have a say past what your parents say.
So I did transition as a minor. I was a teenager who had a lot of mental health issues and had been sexually exploited and
I feel so personally terrible for this woman because of how much testosterone has wrecked her voice. It really, my brain keeps thinking that this is a trans woman, but this is a FTMTF woman, which is such a troubling thing. This must really wreck her mental health. Wow.
hated my body, and it ended with me kind of finding spaces where that was twisted into, no, you're just a boy in the wrong body, and it ended with me having my first ever medical intervention being a double mastectomy at 16 before any hormones, before anything else.
Before any hormones, folks. I'm just gonna take a second. Wow, that's not okay. I don't understand how adults get top surgery before hormones. I think that's ridiculous. I don't understand how. Well, I have so many questions. I wonder what state this happened in.
Can the disagreeer step forward?
Okay, here we go.
I mean, if we're going to be honest, every major medical organization supports gender-affirming care for trans youth.
Not true. That's not true. That's not true at all.
Absolutely.
Safe, and it's life-saving. And there are numerous...
I hate when people say that it's life-saving. I'm sorry, I hate to keep pausing back and forth. I hate when people say it's life-saving, because it's not life-saving unless you attempt to commit suicide, and that suicide attempt is directly related to you not having access to a transition. and that's difficult to prove. It's difficult to say I'm depressed because XYZ. Like, depression is usually a buildup of many, many, many issues. Wow. I hate when people say that. I'm so sorry.
Studies that back that up.
The study that backs it up for puberty blockers is the Dutch protocol, and the same scientists.
I have 10 studies that I can bring to you
The
right
same
now.
scientists that brought that up have since rolled it back and said it was never.
Notice how she's already defensive. Notice how these detransitioners, Luca here, they have been so respectful. Like, I mean, this has been going on a few minutes where they're both in the same space. But this woman here on the right, they're coming in so defensive, so ready for a fight, so ready to go. I have 10 studies. You know, like, it's you gotta be open for a second. And I hate when people are set in their feet about this is how it's going to be, my opinion is not changing.
Yes, truly, I really am sorry, but trans kids are valid, and it's not a decision that they're making.
No one is questioning the validity of trans kids existing. That's not what's going on here. No one's questioning whether or not trans kids exist. Trans kids do exist, and it's like there are trans kids that do continue to be trans into adulthood, and I don't believe that trans kids shouldn't be allowed HRT once they are of proper age to have their natal puberty. But it's so wrong to say that these people are questioning whether or not trans kids are valid. None of them said that trans kids didn't exist. In fact, Luca here said that trans kids do exist, but a lot of trans kids do, like, change their mind. That's not saying that there aren't kids who are trans who don't change their mind. The assumption making is blowing my head up. It's insane.
Here.
I want to speak to that real quick. Like, I came out 13 years ago when I was 14, and I knew, not that I was trans, but that I was a boy.
I had the same experience.
I had to go through a lengthy process of therapy and seeing an endocrinologist,
Yep.
and like go through different tests and exams to make sure that this was real to everyone else involved. Transitioning and being trans was just a process I went through to become who I always knew I was. It wasn't a like decision that I made. It was a life or death thing for me. And if I hadn't gotten on hormones and gotten surgery at 16, I don't know if I would be here.
I can relate to his experience very much of the medical system, of being a transgender person. I understand that this person is not a detransitioner, probably has never questioned whether or not he's trans, and he likely is trans, I'm not doubting that. But every time I hear someone say that they got surgery so young, it just hurts. It hurts, honestly.
Father. I have 4 kids, and also as a trans person, I think that knowing what it looked like for me as a child, and that experience of going through all of the turmoil and all of the trepidation around my gender identity, I would not put my children in that situation.
But denying them a medical transition is not denying them being trans. Social transition, very much a thing, helps a lot of people. Very good holdover.
And also, I don't think that surgeries should be allowed for minors. Like, when we look at the data and we look at the statistics and we look at the research, the vast majority of these surgeries are happening to adults. They're not minors.
Yes.
So let's start there, right? And then further than that, if we look at puberty blockers, blockers are reversible. So when it comes to children, when we talk about puberty blockers, that gives them a shot. And it gives them autonomy over their bodies. It gives them a space that they can explore their expression.
I don't believe in puberty blockers, mainly because I think that you should go through your natal puberty for at least like a hot minute to make sure that this is really something you don't want, to make sure that, I don't think that we should be preventing puberty. I think, because if you're on puberty blockers, you're just like, you're put in this holding pattern, and I think it's just not worth it.
They can explore who they are without surgeries, without all of these other things that could have permanent effects. My kids were maybe 8 and 10 when I started my transition. And so I talked to them in kid terms. I told my son, I said, look, you know, your mom, dad wants to be a dad because that's how I feel. And my kids being so young, they understood it. They were like, okay, we're with it, you know.
Kids get it. Kids get what being trans is, but that doesn't mean that kids understand what they're saying when they say, yes, I want a double mastectomy.
So there is such thing as gender fluid. How
Yes.
do you know that this kid is not going to change their gender expression later on? We really actually don't have studies on.
I was about to say, is this a detransitioner or a... Well, that's interesting. How are you a detransitioner if you still go by he, she, they, regardless?
Children that are taken over long term, like over 10 years, 20 years. You've only been on testosterone 14 years. One of the oldest trans men, Buck Angel, he almost died from testosterone. You're saying right now it saved your life, you may still die from it. You don't know.
That's true. Me personally, I've mentioned this on TikTok a few times. Testosterone has given me heart issues, which is a very common side effect from testosterone. And if you might not even know that you have pre-existing heart issues, and they don't always test for it. I don't remember if I was tested about my bones or my heart before starting. I was tested for one of the things, not both. But they don't exactly, like, I mean, they tell you, but it's not, it's more likely than you think. It's more likely than you think. It leaves you susceptible to a lot of things. It actually, because, you know, cis men actually happen to be more susceptible to heart issues because of testosterone, and that happens to trans men too. I believe there's further to say about that, like what the actual likelihood of trans men versus cis men on testosterone is regarding that, but testosterone is not a cutesy, harmless drug that will just masculinize you and won't put you in the same position as cis men when it comes to their hormonal weaknesses. And trans women likely have a similar experience. Of course, all the information that I have is mostly surrounded around a female to male transition and what that looks like and what the hormones for that does. I'd love to be educated further on trans women.
But you're still part.
Exactly.
You'll die
an adult,
for
you can
ideology,
make
and
that
a lot of
decision.
people have died for an ideology.
True.
I am very sensitive to this subject, as I've been the person who has had to talk people off the ledge when it comes to suicidality.
Okay.
The discussion around how we talk about suicide is a very dangerous one in this community.
The
You know,
way we
my
word
parents were
things.
told, do you want a
Yep.
dead daughter or a living
Yes.
son?
They threaten people. I've been in discussions where there's been a child who is interested in coming out as trans to their parents, and they have been encouraged to use this phrase exactly. I don't know where this started, probably Tumblr or something, but it's, do you want a dead daughter or a living son? And that scares people. It's like fear-mongering. You're threatening your parents. You're saying, I'll kill myself if you don't let this happen. I'll kill myself if you don't, like, and then you have these scared parents, you know, like, consenting to these things and letting it happen, regardless of if they want it or not, because they're thinking, my daughter will die if I don't let this happen. This is insane.
That's not an appropriate way to talk about
Exactly.
And I
Absolutely.
understand that, but
And
it is our
it-
transmasculine youth
that. I understand
that
that.
are at the highest risk.
I
of
understand.
These people are being the way they're speaking to each other is very interesting. It's not exactly they're not yet being passive or angry. It's a very it's like on the edge of being like a heated debate.
and they deserve help, but we also need to have a responsible conversation
Yes.
that is not using suicide as a means to push them down a pipeline before they have that comprehensive care.
Very
So I
well
have a
said.
question.
So,
Very well
Reese,
said.
I know you've been wanting to say
Yeah,
something.
no, because I have a big problem. Oh, yeah, no, so I'm not an interrupter. What I'm going to say is we insult children, our youth, so much by
Wow. Just the oh my god, okay.
taking away their autonomy and their own agency over their own decisions and insulting that they know who they are. Like, an adult knows who they are more than they do. No one knows who I am more than I do.
That's
And it's
true.
always been that way. I've always known who I was. I've never felt like I was in the wrong body. I just had to adjust my body. And
That's
so
a weird way to put that. I've never felt like I was in the wrong body. Just felt like I had to adjust my body. that makes me think of like the fetishes, like the trans fetishes who transition for fetishes. I'm not saying that she is. I'm just.
I think
comparing.
Taking away kids' agency and the right to their own body is, it's anti-human.
Yeah, but we already do that. So what's your solution? We already take away kids' agency and the right to their own body. If I'm dying, like if a minor is dying, and like if my kid was dying, and of course I'm gonna say, no, fuck you, you don't get to choose whether or not like I'm gonna say this is my choice whether or not you have this surgery, because I'm your parent and I want you to live and I have the right to that. And it's just like if there's all kinds of things in the legal and the medical world where you can't get shit done as a minor unless you have your parent there. I think even if you were dying, you can't get shit done unless you have your parent there. Like, if they know you're a minor, there's shit about that. You can Google it, but it's not anti-human. It's just the legal rights of parents and the legal rights of children. It's to protect them. It's how it's always been in America.
I have a question. Do you believe minors should be able to get tattoos or plastic surgery or consent to the list of other? I understand they are different things, but to what level do we? To what level do we give children bodily autonomy over everything they do? Because here's the thing: children need barriers in childhood development. You need barriers, and they need a safe way to push against those barriers. And I worry with the current medical system that instead of giving them a safe way to express themselves and push against barriers, we have taken some of those barriers away, and that is why you see more detransition.
Medical institutions and politicians are very, they can be they're very careful to touch on transgender issues, especially the medical institutions. That's why they let whatever the fuck happen, because they don't want a whole group of SJWs to ride their dick all the way to hell about it.
Because those barriers have been lifted.
Yeah, they're not just doling out surgeries for children. That's not happening.
I had word from a therapist in a single visit at the gender clinic office,
and that was abuse.
This is insane. This woman here is telling Luca that her experience didn't happen. They're not just dishing out surgeries to children. You're looking at one. You're looking at a victim of that, and oh my, that's insane. It's like looking at a gay person who was telling you that they were hate crimes, and you're like, that didn't happen to you. Like, this is like next level, like almost manipulation. Like, if this was like a different conversation topic in a different environment, this would be like psychologically like manipulation.
From that therapist who did not psychoanalyze the rest of your issues.
Right, and that shouldn't.
Yeah, because your issues weren't being trans. There were a lot of other issues that you're addressing.
I have a diagnosis of gender dysphoria as
and
well.
You shouldn't. You were misdiagnosed.
No, I have one.
Yeah, you had to get a second opinion, honey.
And how was I?
So they think that. How do they know that they aren't actively in this same situation? How do they know? Like,
how was I supposed to do that when my parents were told that I would
kill
myself?
But your parents.
Their biggest crime in all this was trusting in a medical system that they thought would help me.
Yes.
And the professionals apparently not doing the right thing here.
I understand, but your parents were responsible for the decisions that were made on your behalf.
I think that what this really highlights is the importance of you sharing your story. Because what it shows is that you can't jump into these transitions, and you shouldn't listen to these doctors that push you to transition.
Why are they just contradicting themselves?
Social media brainwashes teens to believe that they're trans.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at like the numbers and look at like when social media became popular, it's kind of, they coincide with each other. And it's also just like a part of like fear of missing out. If you surround yourself, it's called rapid onset gender dysphoria. It's a social contagion. If you surround yourself with a group of people who are trans, you're likely going to think that you're trans at some point, or might believe that you're trans. I have friends. I had a friend who was a girl in this case, and all of her friends were a part of the LGBT to some extent, and she frequently would label herself as bisexual and change her mind because she felt like she was missing out. And obviously that's a different thing as being trans, but similar things happen with being trans. Brainwashing is a strong word. It's just social contagion. It's a very well-documented thing. And I think if you disagree with this statement, you have to be dumb. Okay.
I have to agree on that one. Like, there's this thing about it.
Right.
All the
Like,
detransitioners.
Yeah, there's this play that they have.
I don't think that it necessarily brainwashes children,
Strong
but I
word, yeah.
think there are a lot of people who get into being queer or trans
Yes.
because it's trendy, and I know that's
Most
a
base thing
really
he said so
controversial
far.
statement to make as a trans person, but I have seen it, I have experienced it, and
How does
also
he
find-
know that he's not a victim of it? Like, I always wonder how, like, the people who are against it but agree with it, like in, like, some way or another, like, they partially agree with, like, generally, like, transmed or, like, this is kind of a transmed opinion here. I'm always really confused on how these people, like, this guy is probably anti-transmed, and a lot of these people over here are probably anti-transmed, but they probably agree with, like, other statements made later. I'm just confused on how they, like in that last conversation, I'm confused on, like, how they know. How do you know that you're not also a victim of this?
I find that social media, especially apps like TikTok, give a lot of these kids
That's why I use TikTok as my main platform.
so much misinformation
Yes.
and lead to people thinking they're trans
Yes.
when there are much deeper issues, and everyone just wants to belong and find an identity, especially when they're young. You know?
I've went on rants about this on TikTok, but it's a tribe mentality. That's all labels are. They're just a way of trying to identify yourself and find your group and find your tribe. But it causes a lot of confusion. It's not just saying, like, oh, I'm an American, you're an American too. It's saying, oh, you did all this to your body, I want to do that too. It's a much more severe case of that.
I think brainwash is such a strong
That's a
word to
very
use
aggressive
there
word. I
when
would
it's
not. That's why I hesitated to step forward.
And that's why I
yeah.
would step in and actually say it's more so of like a social contagion.
Here we go.
Just- yeah.
Here we go.
What got me to transition in the first place was social media. It had a grasp on me that there could be something else out in the world for me during that discovery, and I played it to the fullest 100%. I even passed as a female for a good, what was it, 6
Wow.
years out of the 7 that I was a transition, and later down.
Congratulations to him for, like, passing so fast. I know that ultimately at this point that's not a good thing for him, but seems like he doesn't have any, like, physical, like, bad consequences from that. He might have other issues, but wow.
On the road, I went and paid out of pocket.
It's difficult for a
talked to
trans woman to do.
Just a regular.
Yeah, I mean, I was heavy on social media. Like in my transition, Tumblr, that was the place to be for sure. And everyone was talking about
Tumblr
their
and TikTok.
transition from my experience. And everyone was
Wow.
talking about a lot of mental health issues, depression,
Okay. Never
and
mind,
all
I'm
of
not
that. And
gonna
it
say
was kind of being trendy in that sense. Like when TikTok came out, like that was like a whole nother world. And the biggest thing that I found with that is like they weren't saying a lot of the negative things that were happening in their transition. There was always like a positive outlook on it, like I'm being who I need to be, like this is great.
There's always the rose-colored glasses put on with the way that a lot of these people on TikTok paint their transitions, especially around top surgery, I've noticed. There's actually a particular, like, trans woman who I really like on TikTok. Her name is Zaya something with a P, I don't remember. But she actually documented her bottom surgery, and I think she still is documenting, like, her healing process of bottom surgery. And she's very upfront with how difficult it's been and the struggles of it. And I wish that, I think there's a place for both. I think there's a place for both. Wow, being trans is great. I love being trans. I can get like that sometimes. But I think there's also a place to document the agony of it all, the suffering, and I think that there's not a good balance right now.
Take it to your happiness.
Yeah, and
that's how
I
it's sold.
like so much on social media. Like I made a documentary on my transition, and I really went into depth of like a lot of my depression that I dealt with on that, and I didn't find anyone talking about that.
And so
But I also really quickly just want to say, like, I don't want people to think that, like, social media is turning people.
All right, can the disagree step forward?
All right, here we go.
Yeah, okay, so my thoughts on social media and everyone suddenly looking or being trans. I think whoever is leaning towards that or looking towards being trans for answers was always someone that felt that way or felt some type of way about their gender or their identity or the way they present themselves. They're
some way about themselves, yes, but it's not trans.
They're just going to go that way. I know plenty of femme twinks who went the muscle queen pipeline. It's not a rare occurrence. And so just experience your life, have fun. Try not to take social media seriously because no one is advertising their failures. It's all.
That's a difficult thing for a child to do, though. It's a difficult thing for a child to not take social media seriously. They don't have the brain capacity to do such a thing.
Yeah, but I think it is also important to say that, like, social media is very, very effective. You know, I mean, I personally scroll on TikTok and I'm like, do I have OCD? Do I have autism? Like, all these different things. And, like, it can suck you in.
Yeah, because they do the thing. They go, they give you a list of symptoms, and they're like, if you relate to this, you might have PTSD, OCD, bipolar, BPD, whatever's trendy, right? And they do the same thing with gender dysphoria. I've seen a couple videos just like that, where they're like, here's a list of things I felt regarding gender dysphoria, and it's like very like general things that could be like depression or anxiety or just like general identity issues. And they're just like, gender dysphoria, you're trans.
Yeah.
So it's important to be aware of those things.
I have a question for Samantha, since you have the largest platform here. Do you believe over the years you've inspired people to transition?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think that I've inspired people to believe that it's okay to be transgender, it's okay to express themselves, and that it's possible to live a happy and successful life.
How do you feel about the fact that some of them are going to regret the body modifications they got and going to have like...
I think that they should go to a doctor that is well-versed in gender care and have the...
What is the aggression? What is the, like, maybe I have autism, but am I the only one, like, picking that up? Like, through the smile, this is, like, hostile.
Appropriate psychoanalytic analysis done beforehand. That's not my problem.
I feel like a lot of folks are going to social media looking for possibility models. Sure. They're looking to see if they're okay. I know for me, when I was very young, looking to see if there were other people like me, because for a long time I thought that
I look for other trans meds to watch, so I can get that. I look for other people who share my same opinions. Like, it's
the only one.
Human
exactly, right? And so
people with gender dysphoria need therapy, not surgery.
Therapy first, for sure. I think that there is generally like two ways to go around treating gender dysphoria. And a lot of these things that I said today, I've said on TikTok numerous times. It's conversion therapy or medical intervention, or just like transitioning in general, pardon me. But transitioning doesn't have to be medical at first. You can socially transition. A lot of the things that pre-T trans men do, a big one is actually working out, which does a lot for your like physique. Voice training can help a lot with things like that. You don't need to be medicalized to be trans, like off the bat. Like, I don't believe in. I'm a trans med, but I don't believe in like rushing people into like all these things. I highly disagree with that. It took me years. Therapy is a part of both sides of the spectrum of conversion therapy or transitioning, and I think the help of not only a general therapist, but I think a gender therapist could help a lot of people with this. And I understand that that's not something that's always accessible to people.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with that one.
I don't.
I'm convinced.
We all agree.
I think
it's potential.
But they agree for different reasons. They agree for different reasons.
Yes.
I think everyone with gender dysphoria needs to go through a therapeutic process and mental health care before they make that choice for themselves.
Exactly.
I personally confused a lot of my gender dysphoria for body dysmorphia, because no matter how much I feminize my body, till today I still don't feel comfortable in my own body. And now, like, looking among like members of trans community, I see that people keep on getting more and more surgeries. The surgeries are no longer affirming. You can just tell that this person is like struggling with body image.
Yes.
I was able to get on estrogen pretty quickly when I was 22, and my mental health declined afterwards, and I attributed it to being still in the wrong body, needing more body modification. I ended up getting sex reassignment surgery.
Oh,
I do
Lord.
believe that transition was sold to me as a...
Wow. I mean, if she's talking like fully got like her testicles removed too, then wow, then don't you have to be on estrogen forever then, or she might be on testosterone? But if you get like all of your natal parts removed, you'll have to be on hormones for the rest of your life. One way or another, you'll never be normal. What a difficult issue. I really feel for that.
I don't know if you guys have heard, but I've had a lot of binary trans people say that it's not a mental health issue. Like, if you're trans, and I know I don't agree with that. Like, I think there's a disconnect between the mind and the body. I guess I'm asking that. Like, it's like, do you think that it's a mental health disorder? And
I don't think being
therapy?
transgender is a mental health
disorder.
disorder.
Right.
I think,
But gender dysphoria
incongruence is what they're referring to it as now. It's listed as a sexual health concern. But the gender dysphoria, which is the symptom that arises when you are transgender, is a mental health concern.
So maybe
And the treatment for that is transitioning or conversion therapy.
I'm thinking of, like, that's what I'm trying to say then in a sense.
And then once you are diagnosed with gender dysphoria, and I feel like this is kind of what the prompt is kind of hinting at, if you do have gender dysphoria, the only treatment for that is
not the only treatment.
Transition.
Right.
Whether that be just a social transition, a medical transition, whatever transition fits you, that is the only way to heal your gender dysphoria.
And so a lot of our folks that do transition and may detransition, both experiences are valid, but also understanding that we're not mentally ill
but you
because
are.
we're trans. Yeah,
But you are.
And I think that there should be a psychiatrist or someone within behavioral health to be able to say, okay, you're in the right frame of mind to make this decision.
Yeah, but regardless of whether or not you have outside mental health conditions, you are mentally ill if you're trans, because gender dysphoria is a mental illness.
But
what a
I
take.
want to just make it very clear that trans people are not dealing with mental health because they're trans.
He comes from a good standing.
I feel like transgender is definitely, and elderly trans people afford for it to be classified as mental illness, so it's covered by insurance. Otherwise, why are you getting the surgeries to?
Because
if it's not a medical condition?
The dysphoria is a medical condition.
It is, but it's in your head. I would say that you have some kind of mental disorder if you're trying to mimic a stereotype of opposite sex.
Right, but it's not a mimic. It's aligning.
If you don't treat being transgender as a illness, not transgender itself, but gender dysphoria, if you don't treat that as an illness, she's right, it won't be covered by insurance, and then good luck putting minors on HRT and getting their tits removed. I'm just saying.
I have a question though, because I have a gender dysphoria diagnosis. I always have. But I'm still where I am today.
Can I give you my honest opinion? I think that you were probably misdiagnosed.
I don't think I was.
Oh my god! I don't think I was. Wow. I think you were misdiagnosed. Who are you? Who the fuck are you? Some fucking big shot YouTuber? The fuck?
So you do
feel
have gender
dysphoria in your body?
I certainly do now.
Yeah, me too.
Right. Yeah, because now she has reverse dysphoria. Wow.
You want to talk about now, but at the time I genuinely believed I did. I thought it would save me. And then looking back, I realized that my dysphoria stemmed from some severe trauma that was not handled. Yeah. And that's why I think that mental health step is so important. Yeah. Because I've heard this from several other, mostly female detransitioners who we had some form of pretty bad.
It's very common. They have some kind of trauma, or they have some kind of body issue, and then they hear a trans person associate that issue with being trans. Like, I hate my chest, so I'm trans. And they go, I hate my chest too. Whether that's because they were sexually assaulted, or because they're just uncomfortable with it. And then they go, you hate my chest, I hate my chest. You're trans, so I must be trans too. Or being sexually assaulted can definitely cause, especially like being female, it can cause you to like no longer want to be objectified. So a lot of people will transition because they don't want to be seen as female anymore, because they feel that men are not objectified. And I've got some bad news for you. It's that trans people are we get a whole other different kind of objectified. Not in public necessarily, but being trans comes with your special audience.
I came out to my parents in a mental health facility after telling the therapist that I thought I was transgender. And she told me we had to tell your parents so that way you can get the help you need. It led to me seeing a gender therapist who, honestly, the issues I was facing were never addressed. To this day, no one ever addressed the fact that I had severe, trauma and exploitation going on as a young teenager. Instead, I was kind of just affirmed in, you believe this, and instead of even just a little pushback.
I'd really love to sit down and have a conversation with Luca about a lot of things. I don't know if Luca is a transmedicalist or if how she thinks about things like that. But I would really love to hear more about her experience with the mental health industry regarding being trans and shit like that, because it seems like she was severely mistreated. And I'm also just curious, like most of these people, I'm curious about what state of America they were in.
It led me to the point where the very first medical intervention I ever had was a double mastectomy at 16. A few months after that, I started testosterone because it was the next step of
it's so backwards. They usually don't do it like that.
I was supposed to do.
They usually don't.
God intended for there to be only two genders.
I don't get religious. Oh my God, sass queen over here. I don't do religion. not in conversations like this. I don't get religious.
Okay, so as a Christian, I truly believe that God created male and female, and He created that throughout life, throughout the nature, throughout the wildlife, throughout Earth itself. And then the arguments come up into the ocean sides of, well, there's these asexual creatures and stuff like that. Well, they were designed that way for a reason, and we humans were not designed to. We were designed to procreate and be able to bring life back to the earth, because we live and we die, we live and we die. It's a rotation of a process of life in itself, and it's its own journey. So I truly do believe that there is male and there is female, but I can respect people's choices. However, that's where I stand on it.
Well, I'm not.
I wonder why he detransitioned. Like, I'd really like to know more about his home life.
But I do believe there's only two biological sexes, and somehow that's how it's been designed, whether it's by higher power or by evolution. Yeah. I do believe gender expression has been on a spectrum for centuries. We do have references to people who've been cross-dressing. We have references to eunuchs. And as somebody who went through transition and detransition, when I started taking testosterone, it's almost like reminded me of my original blueprint.
I don't know if this is. I don't know what this person is.
I went against my original blueprint, and I did a lot of damage to it, and I just cannot go back to who I was because without my testicles, I'm just too far gone in my transition.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at.
Can the disagree step forward?
What a conversation this is going to be.
We have historically spent more time focusing on and celebrating several genders. There are several different cultures throughout the world that celebrate.
Yeah, but that's not what we're talking about.
We're not talking about two-spirit. The fact that they exist, and to negate.
Because you're not Native American. You're not those cultures. You don't get a place to speak on that.
Validity is just wrong.
I don't know what specific ethnic group this man is from. Obviously he's black, but I don't know. Unless you have some kind of specific experience with something like that part of your culture, I don't think you can do the card of other cultures that I'm not a part of or know nothing about have multiple gender. No.
There are as many intersex people as there are redheaded people on the planet. I can name 12 people at the top of my head who are born intersex. So to pretend like there's man and woman is just erasing an entire group of people.
Yeah, but that's a deformity. So natural variations, if you want to put it like that, it's a variation. It's not a entire. It's a medical condition.
Speak up.
If I don't even know what kind of metaphor to use to explain that.
And I think also gender and male and female is not the same thing.
Biological sex are different things.
Yeah, we're talking about gender, which is
I used to think that way. The only exception for that is what's this say? It's a definition from Planned Parenthood. Of course it is. Sex and gender. The only way I ever see those being different is when when you're non-binary. Like, I'm a transsexual male. Both my sex and my gender are male, and a lot of, I mean, I guess that's kind of backwards for a lot of conservatives. A lot of conservatives will see that and go, no, your sex is female, your gender is male. So it's actually kind of interesting how this takes specifically that their sex and gender can be bent to different sides of the spectrum. And I don't know where exactly my view on that sits, but since I've medically transitioned, I believe that both of my if you were to take my blood right now and look at my hormone levels, I read as male. You know, biologically I'm male.
Intersex animals that do exist, and that's how they're born. But I also do believe that the initial design was for man and woman, and then somewhere along the way, viruses, mutations, diseases, plagues, all that type of stuff that we have in the world does play a part back onto the world itself. But I believe the initial intent was for God to create Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. I'm just gonna say
no way! He said the thing! I haven't heard that in years. I think it's just because of the people that I surround myself with nowadays. I haven't heard that in years. Oh my fucking god. Oh, bravo to this man. That's precious. That's absolutely precious. Who the fuck is this guy?
That's homophobic.
I know it sounds homophobic, and I understand.
No,
I'm
it is.
It is homophobic.
Homophobia made me transition, and that's what you're perpetuating right now.
And there are biological differences in trans folks when we look at the brainstem. You know, our brainstems are different. Like that's
neurologically.
Right, neurologically we're different.
Yeah, and male and female are different. Exactly.
Trans people are different. Yes. They've found a.
That hurts. I hate hearing that. I hate being put into a third box. Male, female, trans. I know that's not what he's saying, but
difference in the cortex.
There is no biomarker for trans. Some brain scan of some gay males is identical to female brain, but there is no biomarker.
I wonder if that's true. I wonder if that's true. Like if it's actually like a overlap between what trans women and gay males look like in the brain. I gotta write that down and figure that out later.
If God intended to, if God exists and in the way that you believe and just intended to make male and female, then we wouldn't be sitting here. I believe
intersex people would.
Yeah, but you're a binary trans man, so what do you mean you wouldn't be sitting here right now? Because you went from one binary gender to another binary gender, so what does that mean?
Power.
Transitioning improved my sex life. What a personal subject. Maybe. I mean, two very different things, having sex as a binary female and having sex as a trans male. I only ever refer to myself as a trans male when it comes to, like, whether or not I'm going to be having sex with someone, because it doesn't make any sense otherwise. Improved is a weird word for that. Changed, yes. There's no real comparison to be made there for me, personally. And this isn't a true or false, like, opinion thing. This is like a... I mean, I guess it's like a personal experience thing. And I wonder who here is going to say... I feel like the transition... Like, this is my prediction. I feel like the transitioners will probably be a lot more open to talk about this, because maybe they got a little bit of fetishist in them. And the detransitioners will probably say that they felt like hell.
Transitioning improved my sex life.
It's predictable. It's so predictable. Okay, here's one.
Who wants to start?
Well, I guess they could say that it made it less sufferable. I mean, I guess the reason why I'm kind of hesitant is because I'll say this, I didn't have much sex when I was a female because it sucks because it makes you want to die. So I think maybe that's the route they're gonna take. Is it's like I felt dysphoria when I was pre-transition and having sex, and sex was a negative thing for me. So let's see.
Man, I'm embarrassed.
Not to say that my sex life was bad before, but I think transitioning and coming into my body and feeling comfortable in my skin
makes it more
allowed me to open up more, and allowed me to not only be better.
I guess now that I think of it, being on testosterone did make me enjoy sex more.
But also,
it took me a moment to kind of process
what
that,
my
but yeah, I
sexuality
guess so.
was like.
Yeah.
Being trans also like made sex really complicated for me too, because I'm a straight guy and I pass very well, and majority of the women that I've been with, I would have to eventually kind of like break it to them that I was trans and deal with a lot of rejection. And with somebody, I would never let girls touch me or see me without clothes on. Not having a penis made me feel inferior as a man, and that no one would want me, which is why I like rejected that part of myself and never even let it be loved.
Do you want to go? You want to go?
Y'all can go. I'll go last.
I mean, so even though I detransitioned, in the beginning, especially when I was on hormones, like it increased my sex drive a lot, and there were a lot of aspects to that was like enjoyable to explore my fluidity for sure. I was able to date a lot of people, and I think like from detransitioning, it's like the opposite of that. Like my sex drive completely changed.
And you weren't
in a
seen
way
as
that like
anymore.
there's good aspects to not being horny 24/7. It helped me be more comfortable in my body, even with detransitioning, which sounds weird, but like having a trans male body was like so different from the norm. So like I had to accept certain parts of myself. So like even with detransitioning, it helps me accept like certain parts of myself that I don't have still.
It felt weird, and you also attract a different type of partner. Back in my day, I used to attract what we call a chaser.
We still use that word.
Versus
We still
someone
use
who
that
was
word.
genuinely attracted to the female form, which is someone who I wanted to, like that's the role I felt. And so that's where I was comfortable, and now I'm comfortable.
Can they disagree a step forward?
Transition definitely ruined my sex life. I was fine with my penis, but a year after estrogen, I felt like that part didn't belong
Because it ruins the penis.
to me anymore. So I went ahead and had sex reassignment surgery.
It's just like how testosterone can like kind of like deflate your breasts in a way, or it can do this similar thing to give you erectile dysfunction to an extent, or give you shrinkage. So maybe that's a part of it. Is maybe she felt like, or they. I don't know. I don't know. It's the pronouns. So I apologize, but maybe they felt like it wasn't a part of them
After
anymore.
that, my sex drive was gone pretty much.
Yeah, 'cause you got
I kept on having
castrated.
complications. I wasn't able to keep my neo vagina open despite rigorous dilation. I had multiple revisions, including colon vaginoplasty. I just got some of my sex drive back last year when I started detransitioning with testosterone, but it's kind of traumatic to have male sex drive back without my penis.
Yes.
Also, I want to say that sexuality is fluid. My sexuality has definitely changed once I lost my testosterone. Before, I was strictly attracted to men. After I lost my testosterone, I was attracted to people in general, because now I didn't have this like male sex drive, so I couldn't relate to men as much. You know, they wanted to have sex, but I just wanted to hold hands and cuddle. And now my body dysmorphia / actual gender dysphoria as well is worse than ever before. I do feel like I'm stuck in a surgically created body.
I'd kill myself.
I just don't
Like,
think
I
I'm
don't think
doing
that
really
any of these people
myself
should do
by
that,
trying to become
but-
a woman. Yeah, so transition did take a lot from me.
Must be
I'm
really,
sorry.
really hard. Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question?
She seems like the most like unpolitical person here, and that she's just coming from an emotional standpoint. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. That like I actually really respect that in this. I think that there should be like a balance. There should be people here who are entirely political, and there should be people who are entirely emotional like this. And I feel terrible for this woman. I feel like this is like a gut-wrenching story. She transitioned. She went on estrogen. She got castrated. She had many surgical complications. She detransitioned. Does not have a penis. Had to go back on testosterone. She does not have a penis. She don't. Wow.
Also, having sex drive back, it just reminds me that I lost all these years. I could have been having fun, whether it's chasers. I definitely have internalized homophobia. So internalized homophobia also pushed me into transition, because I felt like chasers weren't good enough, because I wanted to be a woman. I wanted to escape
Chasers
my
are
homosexuality. But now,
Not to get off topic, but my experience with fucking chasers like having sex with chasers is they're fucking boring. They don't know how to do shit.
At the end of the day, I'm a gay man, and I'm still living with internalized homophobia because
like they're into it, but they don't actually know how to do it.
Therapists actually never helped me with that.
It's fascinating that you say that because I dated men and women, and in my transition, I felt like I had an internalized homophobia when I was with men because I didn't feel like a gay man.
Yeah.
And that was really hard for me to like figure out because I had this journey for so long. And
when you're having sex with a cis man, you don't really, like, at least for me, I never really feel like a man in those moments because they don't make it a affirming. There are exceptions. There are people who are really good in this world. I know a couple, like, cis men who are really good about that. But I have never, like, sexually had that experience.
A lot of sexual experiences were good, but I was on Grindr and I'm sleeping with these men, and they're treating me how I would want to be treated in a social setting, but I'm like, I was really, really masculine in my presentation, but I tended to be kind of feminine in my roles.
Yeah, they'll be, like, Grindr specifically, not to get into Grindr too much, but they'll be really bro-y with you. And especially with me, like, wow, not to get too much into it, but they will be really bro-y with you and be really like, yeah, dude. And then and then when it gets down to it, playing a very they want you to at least play a very feminine role, and it's like
within sex. And so
I'm trying to like draw a boundary here between what I'm gonna talk about and what I'm not in terms of my own experiences.
I think that
the LGBTQ plus community is not as accepting.
Oh my god, yes. The moment you think differently from the crowd mentality and the LGBTQ, whatever, I hate that, LGBT. The moment you think differently in the LGBT, you are outcast. You are a black sheep, you're transphobic, you're xenophobic, whatever you're racist, you're homophobic, whatever they can throw on you to make you an other, they will do. You're not allowed to think for yourself. You have to be a part of the crowd mentality here. Wow. Different reasons, I would guess.
Musical chairs? Yeah. I'm embarrassed to agree. That is true information.
There's still so much transphobia within the LGBT people in the LGBT community that hasn't been addressed yet.
Oh, but there is in the T part too. Did she say transphobia?
People in the there's still so much transphobia.
Yeah, there's transphobia within the T part too. Just not in the transmed way.
Within the LGBT people in the LGBT community that hasn't been addressed yet.
Shoot, there's transphobia within trans people.
Absolutely. When I was transitioning in high school, I searched for acceptance from the cis hetero world, and now I feel like I'm doing the opposite and searching for acceptance from my own.
Cause he's straight, so they probably don't treat him the same because he'll say that I'm trans, and maybe other like gay dudes or like T4T people will want him, and then he's got to be like, no, I'm straight. And
like when I was in college, the queer community on my campus hated me because I did like heteronormative like guy stuff. I played lacrosse, I was in a frat, but like I wasn't that guy, I guess, that they had in their head. And every time I would go to the LGBT club meetings, I would get like they would stare into my soul like I was just this awful thing, and it's always just made me feel invisible and small in whatever space I'm in, and I find that just really disheartening.
It's funny that you
just happens.
You mentioned like the transitioning in high school part and like that shift from, you know, searching for acceptance outside and then turning around and then having to search for acceptance within the community.
Yeah.
Because I did notice that when I was still living as a trans man, when I passed really well, all of a sudden it was like I wasn't welcome in these spaces anymore. Until they knew.
Yeah, because you're a man and they hate men. The entire LGBT hates men. Besides the gay people, I guess. They hate men. The entire world hates men, and you're treated so differently. I was treated so differently when people started, like, when the shift was really made in their heads that I was, I wasn't this, like, gender fuck anymore, that, I was a man, and that I finally looked and sounded like a man. And they hate that. They hate
and
that.
then you get that icky feeling of
Yeah,
like
exactly.
you only want me here because of
I'm
that.
trans. Yeah, like,
And
Right.
you know, now I have the detrans aspect where no community wants me. No one. Like I'm still part of the I'm part of the LGB part, but I've lost people that I thought they liked me for me, and it didn't matter what I was.
Right.
But then all of a sudden, detransitioning was the thing that
They liked you because you were trans.
I've been called a traitor. I've been.
Me too.
You know, it's
For what?
They don't want me. The rest of the world doesn't want me.
That's not true. That's not true.
It can
We
often
want you.
feel that way. It can
Yeah,
feel
yeah.
isolating.
But it
always
feels
that
really
way.
isolating. Like, this is not a club.
It's not
Right.
a
You know,
club.
and it's not like a personality trait that I'm just taking up, and God forbid one day I change my mind. I won't, but like, or something happens where I have to detransition. I would hope that the people who stood by my side through everything else would still be there for me because of who I am, period.
Because they like you.
And not
Yes.
because of an effing label over my head.
And
He
even when
gets
I
it, yeah.
transitioned, I dealt with the traitor to everyone. It was, you know, oh, you want to be a man and the patriarchy. And I'm just like, I get it. But also...
Of course you did. Yeah.
Also, yeah. But what I found very interesting was like this divide between trans men and trans women. When I first started doing a lot of advocacy, I was told that just being in the space, that I was taking up too much room, that I was taking up too much space and don't speak and all of these things. And I was like, wait a minute, but I'm trans too, right?
Yeah.
This community also belongs to us too. Right. So that was something that I grappled with for a while.
Like
I
we
don't
have the
understand
other
why you cast them that,
detransitioners,
like-
but even then, we're all still vastly different individuals who have vastly different life experience, political views, religious beliefs.
Right.
You know,
You're not
experience
just
how
a
we
detransition.
yeah,
Right,
exactly.
that's no different
Experience how
with
we
the
got
trans
that.
community, right?
In some ways, it's empowering because it feels like even though all this happened, you're being seen as an individual for almost the first time after, you know, spending my high school years being lumped in by both the LGBT community and the rest of the people in a category. But it's also very isolating because you don't have really that community support that other places get.
So that was a very interesting video to unpack and watch together. I definitely will be cutting out a lot of that video and editing, so I think that if you liked the parts that I talked about there and want to hear, or maybe you like some of the things that these individuals were saying and maybe you want to hear more of that, I highly encourage you to check out the video. I will link it in the description to make it just a little bit easier for you. I think a lot of the people there did say a lot of incredible things. I really empathize with the detransitioners there and their lack of community. I think that I would definitely love to sit down and talk with just any of these people here because a lot of them have such interesting like takes on everything, and I really like admire their different like experiences in the world, and I think that each and every one of them has a place here and they all have different and unique wonderful opinions. I thank you very much for watching, and if you liked this, I really would appreciate it if you would like and maybe subscribe here, and that'll tell me that to keep making long form content, and thank you very much.